Usually when you look at a professional sports calendar, it operates just like a metronome,
Yeah.
You have a game every weekend.
Right, just tick-tock.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very predictable, comfortable rhythm. You get 7 full days to let the lactic acid flush out of your system, sit in the dark and analyze the tape, catch your breath, and then go out and do it all over again.
And, I mean, that pacing has defined athletic leagues for over a century. You play the game, you heal the body through sports science, you prepare the mind
Right.
with fresh tactics, and then you face the next opponent. The entire infrastructure of a modern club, from the medical staff down to the data analysts, is built around that standard 7-day cycle.
But if you take that metronome, crank the dial up to like 3 times the normal speed, and then toss in the bitter, lingering resentment of a freshly broken heart,
Oh, yeah.
you get a schedule that looks less like a sports season and more like a twisted physiological endurance experiment.
Today is May 23, 2026. We are just over a month away from the launch of AFT Dice Season 13, which officially kicks off on Wednesday, July 1st. And for those of you who actually follow this league, you already know the fixture that just dropped is, well, it's completely unprecedented.
Totally.
It demands a complete rewrite of the fundamental rules of team management. The schedule makers have effectively taken the standard playbook and just thrown it into an incinerator.
So our mission today is to really dissect this newly released Season 13 fixture. We aren't just looking at the dates, though. We are going to extract the most critical narratives by cross-referencing this brutal schedule with the dramatic and, honestly, genuinely traumatic results of the Season 12 final.
Absolutely traumatic for some teams.
Okay, let's unpack this, because whether you are a casual fan who just tunes in for the primetime blockbusters or, a hardcore stats nerd who already has their ladder predictors open in another tab, this deep dive is going to serve as your ultimate cheat sheet to the upcoming season's most volatile grudge matches.
Yeah, and to really grasp why the timing of these Season 13 fixtures is so combustible, we have to start by looking backward. Before we can analyze the mechanics of when these teams play, we have to understand the psychological baggage they are carrying into July.
The ghosts of the Season 12 finals.
Exactly. We are talking about the ghosts.
And look, no ghost is casting a larger shadow over the league than the reigning premiers, Port Adelaide. We all watched what they did.
It was incredible.
Their path to the premiership was basically a hostile takeover. I mean, we all know they walked into the Gabba and dominated the Brisbane Lions, taking the flag by 25 points, winning 126-101.
Right, on the Lions' home turf.
Yeah, which is just wild. It's like throwing a massive party just to watch someone else blow out your birthday candles. But it wasn't just the final scoreline that left a mark. It was the sheer audacity of dismantling Brisbane at the Gabba, wire to wire.
Oh, I mean, the tactical execution in that grand final was chilling. By the end of the first quarter, Port Adelaide had essentially choked the life out of the contest.
They really did.
They bypassed Brisbane's midfield defensive structures entirely, right? They created this overlap runoff halfback that just left the Lions chasing shadows. Brisbane didn't just lose. They were tactically solved in front of their own members.
I do want to push back on the prevailing narrative surrounding that game, though, because there is a very loud segment of the fan base arguing that Port Adelaide just, caught lightning in a bottle.
Sure, people love to say that.
Right. Did they simply peak at the exact right physiological moment, executing a high-risk, high-reward game plan that just happened to pay off for one afternoon? Or does that wire-to-wire grand final performance prove they are an unstoppable systemic force heading into Season 13?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to evaluate the gauntlet Port Adelaide ran just to get to that grand final in the first place. They are incredibly battle-tested across multiple styles of play.
That's a good point.
Yeah, if you look at the preliminary final against the Gold Coast Suns, we saw a completely different Port Adelaide. That wasn't a tactical suffocation. That was a 121-112 street fight.
Right, it was just a pure shootout.
End-to-end chaos. Gold Coast threw everything at them, forcing the game into a high-transition, high-scoring track meet.
Which they still survive.
Exactly. Port Adelaide proved they could win the methodical, pressure cooker grand final on the road, but they also proved they possess the offensive firepower to outgun a team like the Suns at home when the defensive structures inevitably break down.
So they aren't a one-trick pony.
Not at all. That versatility neutralizes the argument that they just got lucky. A team that only peaks at the right moment usually only wins one way. Port can win ugly, and they can win fast.
But, knowing Port Adelaide can survive a gritty final shootout doesn't mean much when you look at the reality of Season 13. The physical toll of playing that kind of high-octane, adaptable football is completely incompatible with what the schedule makers have just done to them.
Oh, it's brutal.
Coming off those grueling games, teams are getting zero runway to manage their bodies.
Zero. The physical demands of this new fixture are going to push sports science departments into literally uncharted territory. We are looking at a fundamental shift in how human bodies are managed at an elite level.
Let's break down the sheer absurdity of the pacing for the first few rounds just so people understand. Round 1 starts on Wednesday, July 1st. Round 2 is Sunday, July 5th.
Barely any time.
And it gets worse. Round 3 is Thursday, July 9th. Round 4 is Monday, July 13th. We are talking about an entire season operating on a rapid-fire 4-day turnaround grind.
It's unheard of.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. I look at this season 13 schedule as a sprint masquerading as a marathon. It's like trying to run a modern smartphone on a broken battery that never charges past 40%.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. You can still use the phone, but you are constantly in low power mode, just terrified of running too many apps at once because it's going to crash.
That analogy perfectly captures the physiological reality for the players. In a traditional 7-day cycle, a player incurs micro tears in their muscles during a match. It takes a full 48 hours just for the acute joint inflammation to subside.
Just to not feel like they got hit by a truck.
Exactly. And by day 3 or 4, they are back to heavy load training, and by day 6, they are tapering for the next game. In a 4-day turnaround, that heavy load training session completely disappears.
So how do you even train? You can't just run them into the ground on the Tuesday before a Thursday game.
You don't train. I mean, at least not in the traditional sense. You do active recovery, cryotherapy, pool sessions, maybe some really light cycling, combined with the intensive film review.
Oh.
The tactical walkthroughs become purely theoretical. You stand on the field and point to where you should be, rather than actually sprinting there, because the priority is just having enough cartilage left to take the field on game day.
And if you suffer a seemingly minor injury, the math just becomes horrifying. Let's say a player gets a low-grade ankle sprain in round 1 on that Wednesday. In a normal year, they miss 1 game, rehab for 10 days, and come back. In season 13, waiting 10 days means they sit out Sunday's round 2, Thursday's round 3, and potentially Monday's round 4.
Yeah.
1 rolled ankle costs you almost a quarter of the season.
Which completely flips the script on roster management and list construction. Historically, the championship goes to the team with the highest concentration of A-grade talent in their starting 18. You ride your stars.
Of course.
But in this environment, the tactical advantage shifts to the clubs with the deepest, most versatile benches. It's no longer about how good your top 10 players are. It's about the drop-off in quality when you are forced to field the players ranked 20 through 35 on your list.
Because those fringe players aren't just depth anymore. They're going to be starting key matches while the A-graders sit in ice baths.
They will be carrying massive loads. Coaches are going to have to adopt proactive rotation policies, literally resting perfectly healthy star players, purely to bank their physical capital for later in the month.
Which brings us to the actual calendar. Armed with the knowledge of this grueling schedule and the compounding fatigue, we've mapped out exactly when the biggest Season 12 rivalries are going to explode.
Yes.
When you combine empty physical fuel tanks with a deep thirst for vengeance, you are guaranteed absolute theater.
Oh, for sure. The schedule makers have been incredibly deliberate here. They've placed these high-emotion rematches at critical stress points in the season, right when the fatigue of the 4-day turnarounds will be peaking.
Okay, let's circle the grand final rematch. Round 5, Friday, July 17th. Port Adelaide hosting the Brisbane Lions. But here's the massive shift. Brisbane isn't getting a rematch at the Gabba.
Yep.
They have to travel to the Adelaide Oval. They have to face the team that humiliated them. But this time, they are staring down the reigning premiers on hostile turf.
Just look at the timeline. By Friday, July 17th, these teams will be playing their 5th game in just 16 days.
That's insane.
The physical exhaustion will be deeply set into their bones. Brisbane is going to have to board a flight to Adelaide, sleep in a hotel, and run out onto the field carrying not just the heavy legs of the new season, but the mental anchor of that 25-point grand final dismantling.
Yeah.
It is the ultimate psychological crucible for the Lions leadership group.
But the grand final isn't the only score that needs settling. We have to unpack the elimination final bloodbaths from last year.
Oh, the bloodbaths. Yeah.
We all remember the shock of watching the Gold Coast Suns obliterate the West Coast Eagles by 67 points, winning 119-52, and then North Melbourne destroying Hawthorn by an even worse 68 points, 123-55. We don't need to relitigate the box scores. Everyone listening knows those games were absolute massacres.
See, the word massacre implies a quick death. Well, what happened to West Coast and Hawthorn were, like, systemic drawn-out failures.
Oof, true.
When you lose an elimination final by double-digit goals, it completely shatters your internal belief system.
Well, those rematches are both slated for round 12. Friday, August 14th, West Coast gets Gold Coast at Optus Stadium, and North Melbourne faces Hawthorn at Marvel Stadium. Now, the media loves to slap the label revenge game on these fixtures and hype up the idea that the losing team is going to come out breathing fire.
They always do.
But I want to challenge that assumption. Does a 60-plus point thrashing actually motivate a playing group, or does it leave permanent psychological scars? Like, in psychology, there's the concept of learned helplessness.
Right.
If Hawthorn steps onto Marvel Stadium and North Melbourne kicks the first 2 goals of the game, does that fire them up, or do they immediately flash back to last year and just fold?
That is the defining question for the sports psychologists at those clubs right now. A blowout of that magnitude fundamentally alters a team's defensive habits. It creates a measurable spike in risk aversion.
Interesting.
Players become terrified of turning the ball over, so they stop taking the daring kicks through the corridor. They start playing safe, slow, boundary line football, which is exactly how you get strangled by a high-pressure team.
They stop playing to win and start playing not to get embarrassed again.
Exactly the trap they have to avoid. And given that round 12 sits deep in the back half of this condensed season, mental fortitude is going to be incredibly fragile.
Because they'll be exhausted.
Completely. If West Coast or Hawthorn fall behind early in those rematches, the physical exhaustion will strip away their emotional resilience. The psychological scars will absolutely dictate the flow of the game.
Wow. Okay, let's look at another rematch that carries a very different kind of emotional weight. It wasn't a blowout, it was a heartbreaker. Round 9, Sunday, August 2nd at Metricon Stadium. The Gold Coast Suns hosting Port Adelaide.
Oh, yes.
This is the preliminary final rematch where Gold Coast fell short by just 9 points.
The contrast here is really fascinating. West Coast and Hawthorn will be fighting their own internal demons. Gold Coast, however, knows exactly how close they were. They know their offensive structures work against Port Adelaide.
That's the key, right? If a couple of lucky bounces go a different way in that final quarter last season, Gold Coast is the team lifting the Premiership Cup. They aren't going to be playing with fear or risk aversion on August 2nd. They are going to be hunting.
They want blood. What makes that round 9 clash so dangerous for Port Adelaide is the stylistic mismatch occurring right in the middle of a fatigue cycle.
Right.
We established that Gold Coast possesses immense offensive firepower. In a condensed season where complex defensive zoning is likely to break down due to tired legs and lack of training time, a pure offensive juggernaut becomes incredibly hard to stop.
Because the defense is just too tired to rotate.
Exactly. Gold Coast doesn't need intricate team defense to win. They just need chaos. They know they have the weapons to hurt the reigning premiers.
Man, all of these grudges, the tactical adjustments, the fatigue from the 4-day turnarounds, it all culminates in a climax that I still can't quite wrap my head around. If you thought the regular season was a gauntlet, the postseason is sheer madness. Let me lay out the dates for the Season 13 finals, which I am officially dubbing the September Sprint.
The structural design here is a complete departure from the historical norms of the sport.
Oh.
Honestly, it borders on reckless.
Round 18 serves as the qualifying and elimination finals. That happens on Saturday, September 5th.
A standard starting point, sure.
But then the semifinals, round 19, take place on Monday, September 7th. That is a 48-hour turnaround.
Barely enough time to ice up.
And the preliminary finals, round 20, are on Wednesday, September 9th, another 48-hour turnaround, and the grand final is Friday, September 11th.
It's just staggering.
We are talking about 4 rounds of the highest stakes, highest intensity football possible, packed into a single 7-day window. Saturday to Friday. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean? How does a high-performance department even begin to prepare a squad for a 1-week tournament to decide a 6-month season?
This raises an important question about the actual tangible value of regular season positioning. Earning a top 4 spot at the end of the home and away season isn't just about the prestige of a high seed anymore.
Right.
It is a matter of pure, unadulterated physical survival.
Walk me through the mechanics of that survival. Because in a standard system, top four gets you a double chance. If you lose, you stay alive. If you win, you get a week off.
And that mechanism is exponentially more valuable in the September sprint. If the standard bracket logic holds, finishing in the top four and winning your qualifying final on Saturday, September 5th means you bypass the Monday semifinal entirely.
Oh, wow.
You advance straight to the Wednesday preliminary final.
So you essentially buy yourself 4 days of rest while the teams below you are destroying each other on Monday night.
The difference between a 48-hour turnaround and a 96-hour turnaround during finals football cannot be overstated. A team rolling into Wednesday off a 4-day break will have flushed the lactic acid, reviewed the tape, and slept properly.
Which is a massive advantage.
A team coming in off a Monday night elimination game will essentially be relying on adrenaline and painkillers. If a team finishes outside the top four, their path to the flag requires winning an elimination final on Saturday, a semifinal on Monday, a prelim on Wednesday, and the grand final on Friday.
4 high-stakes, knockout games in 7 days. That's taking a traditional month's worth of finals brutality and compressing it into the lifespan of a fruit fly. Physiologically, is that even possible without suffering mass soft tissue casualties?
It will require an unprecedented level of tactical simplification. You cannot run complex transition plays on Wednesday if your midfielder's hamstrings are screaming from Monday.
They just physically won't be able to do it.
Right. You will see teams resort to the most basic, direct, primitive styles of football, simply because their bodies won't allow anything else. But more importantly, means the regular season is going to be played with a level of desperation we've never witnessed.
Because avoiding those extra games in September is the only viable path to the championship.
Teams will completely empty the tank in August just to ensure they secure that top four armor. You will see coaches making incredibly ruthless risk calculus decisions in the middle rounds.
For example, do you rest your star full forward in round 10 to make sure his chronic knee issue doesn't flare up, even if sitting him guarantees a loss that drops you out of the top four?
You have to weigh the immediate cost of premiership points against the future reality of the 7-day final series. Do you chase the win today and risk losing your star for the entire September sprint? Or do you sacrifice the battle to ensure you survive the war?
It's brutal.
Every single substitution, every medical green light, is going to be scrutinized under the lens of that 1 week in September.
Well, Season 13 of AFT Dice isn't just a competition, it is a collision course. You have a league full of unresolved Season 12 grudges, slamming headfirst into an unforgiving rapid-fire schedule that is going to break teams down to their absolute studs.
Completely.
For you listening, whether you are analyzing the matchups for your own models or just getting ready to watch the drama unfold, you are now armed with the fixture quirks and the historical context you need. When Brisbane runs out onto the Adelaide Oval in round 5, you'll know exactly the psychological demons they are fighting. When West Coast and Hawthorn take the field in round 12, you'll be able to spot the defensive risk aversion caused by those 60-point elimination scars.
The context elevates the entire viewing experience. It strips away the superficial layer of just another game and reveals a massive league-wide narrative of physical endurance and emotional retribution.
We started this deep dive talking about the metronome, the predictable, comfortable rhythm of a normal sports season. Well, consider that metronome officially shattered.
Broken into a million pieces.
The pace of Season 13 is manic, the historical resentment is deeply entrenched, and the margin for physiological error is absolute zero.
I will leave you with a lingering thought to mull over before the ball bounces on July 1st. With the final series played over a single brutal week in September, forcing teams to prioritize survival over strategy, does the team that ultimately wins the Season 13 premiership actually prove they're the most talented at the sport? Or do they simply prove they have the highest tolerance for pain?
That is the ultimate question we're all going to be asking in September. We'll find out when the madness officially begins. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. Catch you next time.